Welcome to the Bojack Podcast Horseman Obviously. This is episode number 9. My name is Dominic and I'm joined by Matthew.
Hello.
The aim of this podcast is for me to convince Matthew that Bojack Horseman is the greatest animated TV show of all time. And in this episode, we will be discussing Series 1, Episode 9, Horse Majeure. Hello, Matthew.
Hello.
How are you doing today?
I'm very good, thank you.
Good.
Sun's out, and I had a pretty good shoot earlier, so
Good.
All good.
I've been off this week, so I've been relaxing, which is good. We went to Bath, which I read is called the seaside of Derbyshire.
I was going to say, ask you if you had any fish and chips.
We did have chips, yeah.
Excellent.
But why it was even better is that I won £50 on one of the games.
Okay, not one of the 2p machines.
No, not one of the 2p machines.
Okay.
It was the one where it's a bit like a claw, but you go up and down.
Okay, yeah.
And there's like a keyhole, and you have to get the key through the hole.
Okay. How much for the ticket?
50 pence a go.
Oh, wow.
So it cost me a quid.
Oh, okay.
But I think we spent about £25 in the arcades.
Okay.
But yes, so Horse Majeure. Do you want to just give us a summary of what happens in this episode?
Yep. So we start off pretty much exactly where the last episode left off, with Diane and Bojack in the car. Pretty awkward scene. Diane gets out and pretty early and decides to walk home. And that pretty much sets up the theme of the episode, that Bojack's opened a can of worms by blatantly expressing his interest in Diane. And then the rest of the episode is about Diane and Mr. Peanut Butter's upcoming wedding. And it's kind of split. It's about Diane and Mr. Peanut Butter planning and talking about their wedding, and Bojack deciding he's going to sabotage the wedding. There's another side story in this where Princess Carolyn supposedly starts a relationship with 3 boys in a trench coat.
Vincent Adultman.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which was very weird. Todd's storyline is that he basically starts working for Mr. Peanut Butter, and Bojack is trying to use him to influence the wedding.
Yes, so this is directed by Joel Majeure and is written by Raphael Bob Waxberg and Peter Knight. Horse Majeure, I feel, is supposed to actually be Force Majeure.
Yeah.
Which I didn't really know what it was, so I tried to get a bit of information about what this title might mean. And apparently in law, it's a provision in a contract that frees both parties from an obligation if an extraordinary event directly prevents one or both of the parties from performing their part of the contract. I might come back to that.
Okay.
But I wanted to put it out there to start with. Again, I don't think a title has to be perfect for an episode.
Okay.
But I think it's a clue to the episode. It should be a clue to the episode, shouldn't it?
I think some of the titles differ so much. Some of them are very obvious and some of them are not very obvious. Isn't the Zoe and Zelda's one literally called Zoe's and Zelda's?
Yes.
Which is so literal.
Yeah.
But then there's other ones that aren't quite as obvious.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that I was looking at when I was looking into this title was there's a French film called Force Majeure.
Okay.
Or Tourist is the other name, the European name or the Swedish name, I think, for it.
Okay.
That looks very, very good, by the way.
What, a new film or a film or?
It's modern.
Yeah.
I'd say 2000 onwards, something like that.
Okay.
But without having watched the film, I think it's about 5 days for him to prove something to his partner.
Okay.
I didn't know whether that...
In this.
Yeah.
Because it goes through Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Exactly. Yeah. So I don't know whether part of
the
title of this film is based on that. That'd be really interesting to look into.
Yeah.
Or to find out a bit more. But it's like a dark comedy film about this couple on a ski vacation.
Okay.
Yeah, it looked very good, so okay. I'm going to give it a watch. It sounds like you haven't watched it.
No, I haven't seen it, no.
So, like you said, we begin this episode at the start of the last one where Bojack has tried to kiss Diane, and they're continuing to the drive home. Diane says, we're friends and we should stay friends. And the two of them continue to emphasise this between them. Yeah, it's a very awkward scene, isn't it?
Yeah.
So awkward that Diane decides to get out of the car in the middle of the road and walk the rest of the way home.
Yeah.
At which point, Bojack starts talking to Todd and says, Todd, we need to stop this wedding, but then realises Todd is still in Malibu and he needs to turn around and go and get him. After the opening credits, we get the title screen of Sunday. Todd and Bojack are both sat at the bar and Todd says, doesn't she want to marry Mr. Peanut Butter? To which Bojack says, she thinks she does, but she actually doesn't. And that's why we need to be good friends and put our own feelings aside and sabotage our friend's engagement. And this is what you were sort of conflicted about earlier, where on the very surface, I think because we have this opinion of Bojack being a terrible person, we see it as a purely the top line is a selfish act because Bojack likes Diane and he doesn't want her to get married to Mr. Peanut Butter. But you're right, I think there is a deeper level where he's saying we need to put our own feelings aside. And I think he's referring to the fact that a good friend sometimes might think that you're marrying the wrong person or think that you're doing the wrong thing, but allows you to make that mistake yourself.
Okay.
The second layer to what's going on here is that Bojack is actually saying, do you know what? She's such a good friend that even though it might hurt my friendship with her and she's going to be feeling worse and more unhappy afterwards, it's the right thing to do in the long term to stop her going down this path.
Bullshit.
Well, I think you were sort of alluding to it.
I think he's fooling himself.
Okay, but so I suppose how many levels is it?
I think that's the story that he is trying to put out.
The second level of I'm doing this. So
whatever he says, I don't believe, and the only reason that he can say it is because Todd is so stupid he'll take it in.
Right.
If anyone else was in that position, if he said this to Princess Carolyn, what do you think her response would be?
Well, he sort of does, and she's like, "I'm not having anything to do with this."
Exactly.
Yeah.
She knows that he's only doing it for his own selfish reasons.
So it's only because he doesn't want Diane to be married to Mr. Peanut.
So, okay.
He loves her.
In defense of Bojack, it's kind of implied that Diane and Mr. Peanut Butter probably aren't the best couple. Mr. Peanut Butter's really nice and Diane's really nice. And they seem like a sweet couple together. But on a deeper level, Mr. Peanut Butter isn't going to give Diane what she wants on a intellectual basis. And it's implied that the long-term future of the relationship is probably not good. But that's not the reason why Bojack is wanting to sabotage the wedding. Because if he didn't have feelings for Diane, he wouldn't care. If he didn't have feelings for Diane, knowing how self-centered and selfish Bojack is, he'd be like, yeah, whatever. Go and ruin your life. Go and marry the wrong person. But because he does have such deep feelings for her and he wants to be with her, that's why he's making more of an effort to sabotage the relationship. It's got nothing to do with Diane's future. It's got everything to do with Bojack and Diane's future.
I actually believe that this is a mostly selfless act from Bojack.
Okay.
I'm not saying it's entirely selfish, selfless or selfish.
Okay.
But I think I like the idea that he truly believes that Diane will be unhappy with this person, with Mr. Peanut Butter, in the long run, and she will be in more pain being married to him than if she didn't marry him.
So if this is a truly selfish act on behalf of Bojack, then it'll be the very first selfless act that I see him do. So on the basis of what I've seen so far, 8 episodes in, every single, I might be wrong here, but I'm pretty sure every single thing that I've seen and heard Bojack do is in the service of Bojack.
Yes.
So knowing that, going into this episode, I fully believe that the only reason that he's trying to sabotage the wedding is because he believes there might be a future for him and Diane.
So when he says,
And he doesn't like Mr. Peanut Butter.
Okay, yes. No, he doesn't. So when he says we need to be good friends, I'll put our own feelings aside, that's actually just him lying.
Yes.
Okay. Princess Caroline then arrives because Bojack's called her about an emergency, to which he explains the need to stop this wedding from going ahead. And Princess Caroline is very frustrated by this. She then says, do you know what? It's the weekend and I'm going to enjoy myself now I'm out here. And she goes up to a stranger in the bar and she says, look, hey, you buy me a drink. And this is our introduction to Vincent Adultman, who, yes, is 3 little boys stacked on top of each other in a trench. You go first then.
I didn't understand this at all.
Okay.
When I was watching it, I was trying to analyse it, thinking, what's the deeper meaning here? Does it have a connection to the overall episode?
I think, Matthew.
Like, he's got a broom for one hand and clearly a glove on a stick for the other hand. At first, when you first see him, I'm like, this looks like it's setting up for quite a funny skit. Like, this almost kind of looks South Park-esque.
Okay.
But then there's no punchline throughout the whole episode.
Okay.
It's like, it feels like it's setting you up for something that never arrives.
So this is one of my favourite characters.
Okay.
Firstly, I think just going back to the very start of this, where you said, when did you think it gets good? I think this shows how much I binged this show the first time I watched it.
Okay.
Because I thought that Vincent came in a lot earlier.
Okay.
I thought he was like episode 2, episode 3.
Right.
So that might indicate that I might have almost watched the whole of season 1 in one sitting. To go back to my point, it's a slow burn.
Yeah.
I think...
I will say that I think it's the last scene of the whole episode when Bojack is, quote unquote, talking to Vincent. I got the message behind Vincent, but like I said, he was missing the punchline. I didn't find it funny at all.
Okay. Well, I think there's, again, it is a very much like a secondary, like a side character who has some funny lines and characteristics that add a bit of comedy throughout the show. It is essentially what it is. But I just really like the idea that as adults, we are all just kids acting as adults. So when Vincent says, oh, I like business, I work at the business factory. So he's trying to impress Caroline by saying all these sort of... He says what adults think they should say to each other. So as an adult talking to other adults, there's like a preconceived idea of how an adult should act. And I think that the children are acting as an adult, as they think adults act. But I think we are actually all just children in ourselves acting as adults. And I think he's a representation of that.
I understand what you're saying. I understand what you're saying, but I didn't see that.
I just think it's interesting how children perceive adults.
Yes.
And Vincent's clearly pretending to be an adult, but Princess Caroline and the people around him don't recognise that. All they see is someone pretending to be an adult, which is what we all are doing anyway.
I understand the concept that the kid is just, he thinks he knows, he doesn't know what being an adult is, so he just uses any language that he thinks is adult language. But this analogy that we're all kids and we're all pretending to be adults, I didn't see that at all.
Okay. Maybe that's me reading.
And I think this goes deeper, and I've been thinking about this a lot. I don't know why it came to me in this episode. This is a good example of, this conversation is a good example of why I think I've struggled with Bojack. The show is very nihilistic. Very. Probably the most nihilistic cartoon I've ever seen in my life. And that's not me. Okay. I like to try and be as optimistic and positive as I can be. I actively try to be. And that's probably why it doesn't appeal to me and why it didn't appeal to me in the first place. Because you see this scene, and justifiably so, that might be the way the writers intended it. That whole thing of like, this is a kid pretending to be an adult because really all adults are just kids pretending to be adults. that never even approached my mind. That never came to me at all. And it's that kind of like difference in mindset, I think, that shows why Bojack might appeal to some people and not to others.
Why does that conversation remind you of nihilism? Or is that just a side thought that you had?
Because that maybe nihilism's too fine a point. Maybe absurdism is even better, right? That you've seen this kid and you've come to this conclusion, which is absurd.
Oh, yeah, you mean the idea that us thinking we're adults is absurd.
Yeah.
We're all just children at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Living in a world and pretending to act as adults.
I don't see that at all.
So for me, you are an adult.
Yeah. So for me, when I sometimes, yeah. So for me, when I watched it, I saw a kid that was out of his depth.
Okay.
I saw a kid surrounded by actual adults and him trying to fit in because he's so different to the adults around him.
But I think that is how that's how I feel.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like,
so don't get me wrong. Sometimes I'm like, not to go on to that whole. I think there's a bit of a cliche term, isn't there, about or cliche memes about I'm not adulting very well.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't want to adult anymore. I want to be children. I think that's a little bit overplayed. But what I do like the idea of is the pretense that we give off to other people, and the idea that we have a inner child that we're not acknowledging. Maybe that's the best. Maybe that's what I'm actually trying to say. That we're too busy ignoring that inner child and what we actually want to do to use the meme cliche, adulting. Uh-huh. We're too busy trying to adult. We're too busy trying to get our shopping done and pay our bills and go to work and have friendships and meet social norms that we forget that there is something in us that we don't pay attention to. And maybe my point about Vincent is, and maybe I'm not saying that we're all children, but I'm saying we don't listen to something within ourselves that we actually should listen to, and
Absolutely.
we pretend that we're pretending to fit in and wanting to fit in with everybody, when actually all we should be doing is listening to that child, because that child as well, that child is so like, people always talk about childhood being so precious. Like we all, when we're younger, we want to rush out of, and this is what Vincent is, he's children. He wants to be an adult. As children, we all wanted to be adults, and we all wanted to drive a car, and I can't even remember what I wanted to do now, but do all these cool jobs that you do, and then you get to an adult and you realise it's actually not that interesting. It'd be boring about it. I work, I pay my bills, I go to sleep, I fit in the little hobbies I can where I can, and we wish we were children again. And Vincent's that he is the child, the children wanting to be adults, but he's not valuing what's actually important. And this is why I love Vincent.
Okay, I agree with everything you just said, but I don't see that in Vincent.
Okay. I definitely like Vincent, even if it's just for the absurdity that, particularly in this episode, no one acknowledges what's clearly in front of them.
Yeah.
And I think there's probably a simpler message there. I'm not looking at only looking at what's at face value with people as opposed to what's deeper.
At first, I thought Princess Caroline was purposefully choosing to ignore the fact that he's a kid because she was only talking to him to wind up Bojack.
Yes.
So like when Bojack points out that it's 3 kids in a trench coat, she's like, she just bats it off. She's like, I don't care. It's another human that I'm speaking to. It's not you.
She is just trying to make him jealous.
Yeah,
she
exactly.
Is just trying to do that.
But with regards to Vincent himself, I can't make any judgment because I don't know anything about him. I don't know who he really is. I don't know why he's got a trench coat on or why he's in a bar at that time of night, why he thought a broom was a good use of a hand. Like, I know nothing about him.
Yeah.
So I can only go into this episode going, this is ridiculous.
Yes.
This is so absurd.
And I think on its top level, it's just there's just a couple of gags to do with that.
Yeah. And when you were talking about like what kids want to do when they're young, go to a bar and talk to other adults is probably one of them, right? Yeah. So like these kids one day are like, hey, we should go to a bar. I know, let's dress up like an adult.
Yes.
Like that's as right now, that's as deep as Vincent goes for me.
Princess Caroline starts flirting with Vincent, and this is where Bojack says, are you really trying to make me jealous by flirting with what is very obviously 3 kids stacked on top of each other under a trench coat? I don't know whether there's another point here about Bojack being able to see the truth of people. Again, to us as the audience, it's very clear that he's 3 kids in a trench coat.
Yeah.
But nobody in this world sees it.
No.
So it's almost like you've got a glimpse into someone's perspective where they can see that something's wrong, but no one else can see what's wrong. And maybe what we're seeing is the frustration of Bojack, like constantly going on about, look, I've not even got a problem with anything, but can we just acknowledge that this is 3 kids in a trench coat? If we do that, I'll be happy.
It's like that paranoia quote, it's not me that's crazy, it's everyone else.
And this is how so maybe this is a nice visualization of what that would feel like.
Yeah.
We then get our next title screen, which says Monday. And Mr. Peanut Butter has been pulled over by a police officer because, as he puts it, the mail truck pulled out right next to me and I got a bad vibe. What was I supposed to do? Not chase the mail truck. So again, we're leaning heavily into the fact that he's a dog and dogs like to chase postmen.
I did like this.
Yeah.
Especially the conclusion of the scene when the mail truck drives past and he proper gives Mr. Peanut Butter like evil eye.
Well, he's about to, the policeman's about to let him off because he likes him.
Yeah.
But then he pulls up again and they both give each other this evil eye.
Yeah.
He goes off and he chases it again, even though
but he chases him by driving in his car.
Yes.
Because normally dogs are named for chasing them on foot, obviously, because dogs can't drive. I thought it was funny that like he's still a dog chasing the mail truck, but he can drive, so he's chasing him in his car. Like it's.
I quite liked the music as well with when they have the evil eye contact. I think it reminded me a bit of like GTA music.
Okay.
Like a do-no-no.
Yeah.
It's like something's going to happen here.
Yeah.
But what it obviously sets up is the fact that Mr. Peanut Butter now goes to Diane working in this coffee shop and says that he's lost his license to drive. I'm just going to point out a little visual joke as well in the coffee shop that there's a woodpecker drinking coffee. When it drinks the coffee, it starts pecking away at the table really quick. So Mr. Peanut Butter approaches Diane and he says, great news, I got to ride in a police car. Bad news, I lost my license. Yes, so Diane guesses that he saw the mailman again, which leads Mr. Peanut Butter to explain why he's so fascinated by them. Nothing stops them, not rain, not sleep, not dead of night, not gates. And it's a nice little insight into
why.
Like if you were not from this world, from a human world, and you saw this being approaching every day without fail, and then going and then approaching again the next day, what are you doing? Like you're just dropping stuff off. Where'd you get this stuff from?
Yeah.
He then asks Diane if he can drive them around everywhere for the next 3 months, which Diane says no, she's too busy because she's writing her book. Again,
showing the stupidity of Mr. Peanut Butter.
Yeah, he doesn't
expect... He has no idea that, that Diane's so busy. Like, she just thinks she's so free that she could just drive him around everywhere all the time.
Yeah, maybe this is a bit of a comment on sexism as well, because... Well, the next thing Diane says is, why don't you hire a driver? And instead of going, oh, yeah, that's a good idea, he just goes, oh, my God, while you were talking, I just had the idea that I should hire a driver. I don't know whether it's deliberate or whether it's just showing his sort of stupidity, as we put it. But I think there's maybe a point of men not listening to women. And maybe the point of him thinking that she can drive him around for 3 months is... She's a woman, she must be free all the time. So then we then cut to outside Mr. Peanut Butter's house where Bojack is planning to break into Mr. Peanut Butter's house with Todd. And Todd says he doesn't know how he feels about breaking and entering. And Bojack's checking off all these things that he wants, this checklist of tools that Todd should have. And in this toolkit, there's a burner phone and some cyanide capsules. And yeah, I think the whole cyanide capsule was, because it goes into a joke later, I think it was a bit, I don't think Bojack's a bad enough person that he would allow Todd to kill himself just to get out of trouble. So Todd enters the study. He breaks into the study of Mr. Peanut Butter's house. But as he's typing away at the computer, Mr. Peanut Butter actually comes into the room, at which point Bojack's like, take the cyanide, Todd, take the cyanide, and runs away. Mr. Peanut Butter presumes that Todd's there to interview to be his driver.
Even though he's not posted the advert yet.
Yeah, even though he's not posted the advert.
And he knows he's not posted the advert.
But he's like, oh, this would show like initiative, which would be a good trait. So Todd sort of rolls with it and says, yeah, okay, let's just... So I think that's quite on character for Todd, actually. Like, it might be how he got into trouble with the drug cartel at the very start. Mm-hmm. Like, he sort of like just flows with the situation and whatever happens, happens.
Yeah.
So
he's very much a yes man.
Yeah, he's like, yes, let's do that.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah. Which is probably a trait of Todd's that I really like. We talk quite disparagingly about Todd, but he's probably the most positive person in the show.
Okay.
He has a lot of shit to deal with, but he's got quite a sunny disposition.
Yeah. Because Todd hasn't got his resume for this job, Mr. Peanut Butter pulls out his own resume and gives it to Todd so that Todd can give it back to him. And then he sits there reading the resume, pretending that it's Todd's resume. What did you were going to say something about that?
This whole conversation's so dumb. But I guess it's supposed to be because they're both dumb characters. So I don't know. If they wanted to find a way to write in Todd becoming an employee of Mr. Peanut Butter, I just think there could have been a slightly cleverer way to do it. I think this whole conversation is really stupid.
Yeah, it sort of highlights how dumb they are. So Mr. Peanut Butter gives him the job, and we now see Todd driving Mr. Peanut Butter around. And Todd says, "Can you believe this weather we're having?" And Mr. Peanut Butter really excitedly says, "No, I cannot believe this weather we're having."
Yeah.
I like this because if someone says, "Can you believe this weather we're having?" it's almost like an offhand comment, isn't it? Yeah. And someone else just goes, "Oh, yeah, no, yeah, it's awful, isn't it?" Yeah. But Mr. Peanut Butter actually cannot believe this weather. So he's displaying the true traits of someone that cannot believe the weather. Mm-hmm. I think there's a bit of him just also enjoying small talk as well and enjoying the romanticism of being driven around.
Yeah.
We go back to Bojack's house now, and we get a visual joke. Outside his house, there's a sheep mowing the lawn, and all the clippings are going straight into their mouth.
Yeah.
Bojack calls Princess Caroline, and he says he's bored, and he thinks Todd has swallowed the cyanide capsule. "Do you want to bang it out?" he says, which I think is... Yeah, I don't really like this idea that Bojack thinks that Todd's killed himself, and he's just not bothered by it.
I didn't see anything wrong with it at all.
Like, you thought that was unnecessary, Bojack.
Yeah. So far, I have seen nothing to suggest that Bojack actually likes Todd in any way, shape, or form. Like we mentioned in a previous episode, he likes the fact that he's around because it's like having a radio on in the background.
Okay, but now that's radio's turned off. So we had a whole episode where he didn't want Todd to leave.
Yeah, but you can
not just die. He didn't want him to leave.
Yeah.
And he had to put a whole plan of sabotage in to stop him.
Yeah, I suppose so, yeah.
But now we've got an episode where he says, "Oh, he's gone, he's died, I'm not bothered."
Yeah.
Now I feel like it's a little bit off.
Yeah, okay, I'll see that.
Princess Caroline rightly says, "I'm on a date with Vincent Adulman." And Bojack, for the second time, says, "The guy from the bar, there is actually 3 boys stacked on top of each other under a trench coat." So he points it out for a second time here. And Princess Caroline just says, "Well, don't fly into a jealous rage about it." And he's not sounding jealous, I don't think. But again, it's that sort of paranoia that you referred to, that he can see something for what it is, but no one else can. Mm-hmm. How it's done is also gives off the impression that Princess Caroline doesn't want to actually listen to what Bojack's saying. So Princess Caroline ends the phone call, and Todd comes back into the room, and Bojack says, "Look who's not dead." And Todd says, "I'm better than not dead. I'm Mr. Peanut Butter's driver." To which Bojack replies in a sinister tone, "Perfect, now you can infiltrate Mr. Peanut Butter's inner circle. Sure, you'll act all friendly, gain his trust, chauffeur him around on his little errands, but all the time you'll be studying him, scouring out his weaknesses, biding your time till we're ready to strike, and once you zero in on his Achilles heel, we will take him down." And Todd just replies, "Hooray, betrayal." I'm trying to remember why I wrote all that down. I suppose I just quite like the sinister tone of it. Not on a deep level, I just thought it was quite funny.
Yeah, there's no hesitation from Bojack.
Yeah.
Just go straight in.
Yeah,
it's okay, betrayal time.
Yeah, I almost quite like the stereotype of like the evil genius as well,
Yeah.
like hatching this plan. This is where Todd's starting to... He probably saw a part of Mr. Peanut Butter that he quite enjoyed spending time with,
Yeah.
and now he's a bit conflicted.
Yeah.
So Todd is now driving Mr. Peanut Butter again, but this time he's very nervous, and he even says to himself, "Keep it cool, Todd." Mr. Peanut Butter hears some mumbling, and he says, "If you're having a bit of small talk, how about you send a little my way?" And again, Todd says the same line, "Can you believe this weather we're having?" but in a bit of a nervous tone.
Yeah.
And again, Mr. Peanut Butter excitedly says, "No, I cannot believe this weather we're having." I've written, I think this is actually a bit of how dogs are as well. Like, I get a feeling from dogs sometimes that they're just happy to be around you.
Yeah. It's one of my, sorry, bit of a tangent. Maybe my favourite meme of all time is I don't know if you've seen it, you son of a bitch, I'm in. You know,
What's from?
it's from Rick and Morty.
Yes, yeah.
And it's from one of the heist episodes.
It is.
And like every time someone's
It gets
definitely they go, "You son of a bitch, I'm in." And this meme is that, except someone's put like a German Shepherd's head on Morty's head, and the meme says, "Every time I stand up to do anything."
Yes, the dog is...
"You son of a bitch, I'm in."
All I'm doing is to go to the dog.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm with you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's the kind of like.
So maybe that's what, again, maybe there's a bit of that with his characteristic as a dog, and if someone says something, he just wants to what's being said.
Yeah.
So we get another title screen of Tuesday now, and we're back at Bojack's house, and Diane has arrived to continue writing on the book. Bojack says, "Weren't we supposed to start half an hour ago?" And Diane says she's just been sitting in her car. So I think this is sort of her explaining that she does still feel really awkward and confused about the kiss with Bojack. But Diane goes on to say that she's been looking over her notes and she thinks she's got enough to finish writing the book. And Bojack says, "So you don't want to interview me anymore?" And the way he says this definitely feels like Bojack doesn't want these conversations to stop. He's been enjoying, whether that he's enjoying talking about himself or enjoying talking to Diane, or a combination of the two.
Mm-hmm.
He's disappointed that this might stop. And maybe in his head, for some reason, he thought it would just always continue. So Bojack says...
Just while we're on that, do you think there's an element of that in their dynamic that is very, well, I don't know if it's very common, but it is common for people to have feelings for their therapist, for example, because they're sharing a lot about themselves. The other person,
I think there's a cliche though.
Do you think there's something there because Diane's listening to him all the time, and like she's literally paid to listen to him?
Yeah.
Like, is that has strengthened his feelings for her, or?
Yeah, I suppose, are we saying that if we took out his selfish nature, do we think that he's developed a stronger bond with her anyway, just because he's been talking about himself? I would still go back to the fact that although I think Bojack is selfish, I think that, to use my phrase I said earlier, I think they're kindred spirits.
Yeah.
And I think now it's almost like you're saying you're not going to talk to that friend anymore.
Yeah.
That you've been developing a good relationship with. So then it feels like something's been taken away from you.
Yeah.
Bojack says, I'll see you around though. To which Diane awkwardly mumbles, "Why did you have to go and make things weird, Bojack?" And she walks away, and Bojack is left standing at the door and says, "I made things weird?" Yeah, there was something about that line that maybe I think didn't need to be said, because I think it's sort of,
Yeah.
It's sort of trying to imply that he doesn't understand that he made it weird. He doesn't think his actions made it weird.
Yeah.
But maybe it's sort of also saying that he's been seeing a positive response from Diane to his feelings up until that point, and now he's confused. So he thinks she's made it weird by not kissing him back.
Okay. Yeah.
So he's like, you made it weird, not me.
Yeah. Or maybe it was like, I made it weird. No, it was already weird.
Yeah. Okay.
We're both aware that there's something going on here.
Yeah.
So just because I acted on it, why does that mean I made it weird?
Yeah. So Diane is now shopping with Mr. Peanut Butter, and he's explaining how to add things to the wedding registry. Diane overwhelmingly says, and that way everybody knows what I want, and I know what I want, which is what everyone wants, and it's really clear, and nobody's confused about anything. So this is demonstrating that she's very confused about the whole situation still.
Yeah.
She doesn't know. She's still trying to grapple with what happened with Bojack and whether she should be getting married to Mr. Peanut Butter.
Yeah.
But Mr. Peanut Butter does recognise that something's not right.
This is the other dog reference coming up as well, by the way, that I liked. Because they start talking about the biscuit warmer. He paints a scene for us.
Yes,
in the future. And there's one bit he says, I'll bring you the newspaper and I'll bring you your slippers. Which is a very dog thing to do, right? Like dogs don't actually do that in real life, but in like the Hollywood version of dogs, like in American Family, wherever you see them bring the newspaper, bring the slippers to their owner, kind of thing. And
yes, he does. Yeah, but he paints a very calming picture for her, and I think he does actually put her at a lot of ease.
Yeah.
He now demonstrates that he has these nice qualities, that he's able to bring Diane back down to earth from this sort of not mild panic attack, but
this is one of those
anxiety that she was feeling.
This is one of those moments where it makes you realise why she might have feelings for him.
Yes. She even goes, yes, there is biscuits. Yes. She almost her saying that she wants the biscuit warmer. It's her saying, yes, I do want to still marry you.
Yeah.
But Diane does say it's not really the marriage that's stressing her out. It's the big wedding and the year of planning. Mr. Peanut Butter says, well, forget all that stuff then. Let's just do a small thing next month. And Diane realises, that would be amazing. Let's do that. So they both agree to that. Back at Bojack's house, Todd is trying to brief Bojack on what he found out while he was driving him around. And I like this bit. Todd says, then we got talking about Sticks. And let me tell you, he has some serious opinions about Sticks.
Yeah.
And that's the I like that.
Yeah, another good dog reference.
Pretty heavy on the dog stuff. But I do like that idea that it's not like a stick just isn't a stick to a dog.
Yeah.
Like we could have a whole conversation about Sticks.
Yeah.
Maybe they could do a podcast about Sticks. Go into the details, the nitty-gritty.
That's quite a funny concept, actually.
Bojack then says, you haven't given me anything that's going to help me sabotage this wedding. And Todd says, didn't I tell you they called off the wedding? And Bojack's like, brilliant, the plan worked. But then Todd says, no, they're not doing a big destination wedding next year. They're going to do a small wedding next month. But as they're having this conversation, Todd drops some of the crisps that he's eating, and he drops them under the sofa, and he's reaching underneath the sofa. And we get a reminder of the Decathlon 8 receipt that they lost earlier.
When this came up, I was like, wait a minute, I know that there's something there for this. And because it's been a few weeks since I watched that episode, I was like, what is that? And why is it significant? I knew there was something a big deal, like there was a big deal. But then, when I saw it, I was like, okay, now I'm starting to put it together.
So we think he's about to pull out the receipt, but instead he pulls out a letter addressed to Bojack, summoning him for jury duty. And Bojack says, I can't worry about that now. That's a problem for Friday, Bojack. He then says to Todd, come on, Todd, think. There's got to be something sloshing around in that pot-infused jello shot you call a brain.
I did enjoy that. As a put down.
Yeah. But this is Todd's first little unconnected series of thoughts that we go through.
Yeah.
It's proper monkey brain stuff, isn't it? Like, it's just all over the place. And Bojack interrupts him and says, well, what are they doing this weekend? And he says, well, I think Diane and Mr. Peanut Butter are going to the bank on Thursday. And Bojack's like, yes, I think we can use that. We can do something with that. This gives us a title screen of Wednesday, and Bojack is in the diner with character actress Margot Martindale, and he's trying to get her involved in staging a bank robbery. Just a little thing I do quite like how I don't think it's every time, but almost every time they refer to Margot Martindale, they don't call her that, they call her character actress Margot Martindale.
Yeah.
I do quite like this character, actually.
I like her.
Yeah, I think she's it's obviously a comment on actors like thinking more of their art than what is actually there.
Yeah.
Like that she's trying to explore such a deep level of her craft. But do you know what? It reminded me a little bit of the Celebrity Stealing Club.
Okay.
That's what I was trying to articulate at the time, whereas I felt like they were actors and they were trying to immerse themselves in this theatre, the world. But the character actress Margot Martindale does that so much better, I think.
I think she's quite positive as well. And as I've said a number of times, the amount of negative characters in this show, that it's nice when a positive character does show up.
Yes, no, I like her. Basically, Bojack convinces her to live out this real life play, which is her robbing a bank, and she agrees to it. We then get a title screen of Thursday, and Diane and Mr. Peanut Butter are at the bank where Bojack just happens to bump into them. And Margot Martindale runs in with a ski mask and an AK-47, shouting, "Nobody move, nobody gets hurt." At first, she approaches the wrong woman and she says, "That's a pretty ring." And I like that Bojack has to sort of cough and do a little gesture. No, you've got the wrong person, it's her over there. And then she says it again, "Oh, that's a pretty ring you've got there." Mr. Peanut Butter says, "Just give the ring to her." And Margot says, "Just a ring? The ring is a symbol of your love. If you don't care about the ring, it really makes me wonder if you care about the woman wearing it."
Mm-hmm.
So Diane then says, "No, hang on, Mr. Peanut Butter's right. If the ring is just a symbol for love, then why would I need a symbol when I have the real thing?" And everyone sort of like goes, "Ah." And then she also goes, "Why are we even waiting until next month to get married? If anything, this bank robbery has reminded me that life is short and we should get married sooner, like Saturday." Even Margot Martindale is like, "Oh, keep the damn thing."
Yeah. Yeah, it feels like one of those things where no matter what happened in that scene, it would have led to them confessing their love to each other.
Yeah.
And the security guys, I enjoyed them because there was an electric eel in there and he's tasered himself.
Yes.
Which was a nice little visual joke.
No, that's good. Yeah, there's quite a few in this one, actually. So we now move on to Bojack's restaurant where Diane and Mr. Peanut Butter are having an impromptu rehearsal dinner. I'm going to bring up the banners that are above them. Did you see them?
Yeah, because it changes as well.
So the first one, at this point, it says, "Congrats, Diane and Mr. Peanut Butter." Mr. Peanut Butter is one word.
Yeah.
It's setting up the next banner as well, which I think, because you could see that just by itself and you'd be like, that's a funny joke. Yes, so Bojack enters the restaurant where this dinner's happening, and he complains to Todd that the bank thing was a dud. And Todd says, "Well, it's like Vincent says, oopsie." Again, Bojack tries to explain to Todd that isn't a person, it's three people in a trench coat. And Todd's like, "I don't want to be in the middle of whatever you and Princess Caroline have going on." So it's not just Princess Caroline, the whole world is oblivious to the fact that it's three people in a trench coat.
Mm-hmm.
But again, Todd's not listening to what he's actually saying.
Yeah.
Bojack then walks up to the couple and interrupts Mr. Peanut Butter's speech by offering his restaurant as a venue for the wedding. He also makes a joke about not looking a gift horse in the mouth, and everybody laughs apart from Diane, because obviously she knows that Bojack probably got sinister reasons or selfish reasons why he's...
Ulterior motives.
Ulterior motives,
yeah.
So Bojack says to Todd, "This is perfect. Now we have the home field advantage. Perfect for sabotage." Princess Caroline comes up to Bojack and says, "Thank you so much for calling me last night. If you hadn't have called me, I would have never have met Vincent." And she thinks that she's falling in love with him. And again, Bojack makes a comment about him being free kid. He says, "Have you seen him without his trench coat on?" Todd even says as well, maybe you should spend a little one-on-one time with him. And he says, That would be 1-on-3 time with him because it's 3 little kids. Todd then goes outside to have a pee, and Mr. Peanut Butter sneaks up on him in a sinister way. And again, I like the joke that Todd makes here where he goes, I wasn't going to pee, I was just taking my penis out. like that makes the situation any better.
Yeah.
Mr. Peanut Butter says, I know what you've been doing while you've been driving me around. And we're supposed to think that he knows that Todd's trying to gather information to help Bojack sabotage the wedding. But actually, he says, you were becoming my friend. He then goes on to say he could use a friend right now because there's something he needs to get off his chest, something that could destroy the wedding, which is probably exactly what Bojack wants to know from Todd.
Yeah.
Mr. Peanut Butter says here he's not sure if he's ready to get married again. He didn't have doubts until he found out that Diane had doubts.
That's something that I don't know if we should probably reflect on a little bit, is that earlier on in the episode we find out that Mr. Peanut Butter has been married twice already.
That's good that you brought it up because I wouldn't think of that as new information.
As far as I'm aware, this hasn't been brought up at all in the show, and it's just like fobbed off. When he says it, I was expecting Diane to go like, wait, what? You've been married twice before?
No.
But obviously this is something that they've already spoken about.
Yes, you're right.
In their relationship, it's just not been shared with us yet.
Yeah, you're right. This isn't the first time I think we learn it maybe we learn it in this episode.
Yeah.
He brings it up earlier. But no, you're right. Yeah, I think.
I was surprised.
Okay.
When he says it, I'm like, whoa, wait, he's been married twice before. And that gives me more doubts for the future of their marriage, yeah.
So he didn't have doubts until he found out that Diane had doubts. And she is smarter than he is. So maybe she does know something that he doesn't. At the moment, he thinks he's ready to commit to Diane, but he can't even commit to his favourite type of stick, which at the moment is short and novelty, but he doesn't know what it's going to be in the future. He even says he's having a dream. He has this dream that he's having at the moment where Diane is gone and he feels relief. But then at the end of it, he says, thanks for listening, Todd. You're really a good friend. So he's really laid into the fact that he's trying to say to Todd that we have this strong connection now, which is probably going to make it harder for Todd to side with Bojack and betray the wedding. Yeah, now I'm reading it again. I don't know why I haven't written anything about it, but that seems like quite a big insight into Mr. Peanut Butter, that he's having a dream about Diane being gone and he feels relief.
Yeah.
And that he doesn't fully know that he's okay with it. But maybe he's, again, like you said, like happy to go along with things and see where it goes a bit more.
Or maybe this is once again a reflection of why his previous marriages didn't work, because if he's having doubts going into it, then maybe he's got commitment issues or something. I don't know. Also, it's quite interesting because I would argue that Diane is more of a main character than Mr. Peanut Butter. We know, or at least we feel like we know Diane's feelings and intentions more. We get the impression that she's having doubts about the wedding, but we just see Mr. Peanut Butter as seen only positive things about his relationship with Diane. So to have this insight that maybe he's even less sure about it than Diane is, that's quite interesting to see that side of it that we haven't seen before.
I suppose what I'm thinking about more is the fact that we have quite a one-dimensional view of Mr. Peanut Butter. Like as just I'm just happy, I'm just going along with it.
Yeah.
But this is showing a side of him that isn't quite like that.
It shows self-doubt.
Yes, yeah. And it maybe unconfidence, and it shows that there's something else underneath his happy thoughts.
Yeah. It also gives us more information about their relationship in general. Yeah. That, like, as an audience, the show is implying that this wedding probably might not be a good idea because of the way that Diane feels, and the Bojack situation and all these things that are like we're drip fed, and this is just another thing that's like, oh shit,
maybe
this really isn't a good idea.
Okay. So Todd's now in the car with Bojack, and Todd is worried that information that he's got about Mr. Peanut Butter and whether he should tell Bojack. Bojack says, Todd, we make a good team. My knack for coming up with plans and your ability to hear them and contribute nothing more than 3 words at a time makes us a pretty good team. And Todd just replies with 3 words, you said it. It almost points out that this isn't the good relationship, and that the good relationship that Todd has is actually with Mr. Peanut Butter that he's been developing now.
Yeah.
And I think it's also Todd reconsidering his friendship with Bojack.
Yeah.
Todd is now back in Bojack's house and laying on the sofa when he hears that beloved character actress Margot Martindale is in police custody for her role in a failed bank robbery. This then leads Todd on another unconnected series of thoughts. And it takes him a long time to sort of get there. And they sort of tease us as well a little bit. I think there's a point where he goes, Margot Martindale picked up the tape in the bin. So that means she likes tapes. Tapes is something. So he gets there a couple of times.
Almost reached the right conclusion.
Doesn't quite get there. They sort of reel us in quite nicely, actually. But finally, he makes the connection. He says, so Bojack used Margot Martindale to sabotage my rock opera. And then just goes, oh, dude, he's not angry. It is that sort of thing of he's upset.
Yeah, I'm not angry. I'm just disappointed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I like this because earlier on in the episode, you teased with him finding the receipt.
Yes.
And it misses, and you're like, oh, okay, that's it for this episode. And then he goes on this random.
Yes.
There's no way that he could have connected those dots. There's no way.
It's very, I should have written it. Oh, no, I shouldn't have read it all out. But it's very unconnected. But also, as he's making the points, he's getting angrier and angrier.
Yeah.
And I think we almost feel like he's going to get really angry at the end when he really finds out. But he's not. He's just disappointed in Bojack.
Yeah, I get that. It's like, well, I saw that coming.
Yeah. So now we get a title screen of Friday. And Bojack walks into the living room and says, rise and shine, Todd. And Todd just looks mad and says he didn't sleep. Bojack sort of ignores it and just says, we don't have much time left to sabotage the wedding. And he remembers he has jury duty. So I think there's a point here where when he comes in and Todd's looking mad, that we're waiting for Todd to confront Bojack about what's happened.
Yeah.
Bojack hasn't given him the opportunity to do that.
No.
So Bojack is now in court serving his time on jury duty.
Another good animal joke here as well.
Yeah, in court, the lawyer is a sloth.
Yeah.
And he's very, very slowly explaining every question.
Yeah.
We get another title screen to Saturday.
Something that I'd not really thought about until now is that a lot of the characters are animals, obviously. And I've just realised that a lot of the time with how much I like the character depends on what animal it is.
Okay. Yeah.
Like I like the sloth character.
Yes.
Because sloths are cool.
Yeah.
You know, they're nice and friendly. Yeah. And like thinking about it, if Mr. Peanut Butter wasn't a dog and he behaved the way that he does, I might not like him as much.
So do you think are we thinking that maybe there's a reason why characters that the writers that Raphael wants us to like are made into more likable characters,
Possibly,
animals?
Yeah.
So the case has come to a close and Bojack is sitting outside the courtroom when Margot Martindale walks past and she's in custody. She's very excited to see Bojack and she says it's been the role of a lifetime. She's really happy with this situation and what's happened. And maybe she still thinks the role is going on. Like for her, the role wasn't just the bank robbery. It was dealing with the complications of this character going to jail.
Well, it's character.
Yeah. She also asks Bojack if he stopped the wedding that he was talking about. And he says, no, it's happening now. And Margot says, I never understood why it was so important to keep those two apart. Bojack says he was just trying to be a good friend in his own shitty way. This is where I can't use my argument anymore of him not romantically liking Diane, because he then goes on to say, Diane deserves the best. She's smart and kind and beautiful, and it's going to be mostly synonyms from here on in, and I'm falling in love with her. So he basically realises that he loves her. And Margot Martindale says, well, tell her then, Bojack, speak from your heart. So Bojack now gets very excited about the idea about telling Diane how he feels, and he rushes off to the wedding to tell her. As he arrives at the wedding, Todd is standing outside. As Bojack asks if he's too late to stop the wedding, Todd says he's done with this whole sabotaging of the wedding, and then Mr. Peanut Butter's actually been really nice to him. And this is where Bojack says, Mr. Peanut Butter is nice to everyone, and that's what makes him so stupid.
Yeah.
And that's exactly sort of what we've been saying, and Bojack's calling it out now.
Yeah.
Maybe also like he's trying to insinuate that his niceness is like false. No, he's really nice to everybody. Or is that me? Okay, maybe that's my pessimism. But like, I think I've seen it in life where there's people that are always really nice to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a part, and maybe, is it wrong to say it's a female thing?
Yeah.
But there's that trait, I think a toxic trait, that like that Mean Girls scenario, where it's like you're being nice to them, but you're not really being nice to them.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think there's something in that where there's like that sort of falseness that's actually, that you pretend is nice, but it's actually not nice.
I don't think that's the case of Mr. Peanut Butter, though,
Okay.
because I don't think he's smart enough to do that.
Okay, you don't think he can, he's just generally nice to everybody.
I think he's nice because he's stupid. And again, this doesn't mean that all stupid people are nice and that all nice people are stupid. It goes back to is it the first episode when Bojack says he doesn't realise how miserable he should be? I think that's a lovely trait in Mr. Peanut Butter. I love his like optimism and his sunny disposition. And that also reflects on his relationships with other people. He is always positive and therefore he's always nice. He's not nice to other people. He's just nice. This connection between him being nice and what Bojack says, he's nice to everyone, that's what makes him so stupid. I think you could flip that and say that he's so stupid, that's what makes him so nice.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I do, yeah. But,
or maybe it's just that Bojack can't see from Mr. Peanut Butter's perspective.
yes. Yeah.
That Bojack is so jaded and pessimistic that he can't possibly see that someone else might want to be nice to other people in his life. I think it's just a direct callback to that quote in that first episode, doesn't realise how miserable it should be.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, Bojack, just because you're miserable and nihilistic and pessimistic doesn't mean that everyone else should be.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like, if Mr. Peanut Butter is just naturally a nice person, or he wants to be nice to people, or he doesn't know any other way of them being nice to people, then that doesn't necessarily make him stupid.
Yeah.
It makes him stupid in the eyes of Bojack, but it depends how you gauge intelligence. It's like people can be different types of intelligence. You know, you can have emotional intelligence,
Yes.
which I think Mr. Peanut Butter has better emotional intelligence than Bojack does.
Yeah, well, he was very nice. He always just displayed that in this episode, which went with Diane when she was full of anxiety.
Yeah.
Which I think was very good. And again, I keep going back to this, very dog-like. Like people always think that dogs recognise when you need a calm, comforting presence. They know when you're happy and they reflect your feelings.
So we don't like the idea of calling Mr. Peanut Butter stupid.
Only because...
I think maybe a better way to phrase it is he's not as deep a thinker as Bojack is.
Okay, yeah.
Which can often lead to a more optimistic outlook because you don't see the negatives in everything so much, right? Maybe that's it.
But then maybe he is a bit of a deep thinker because he was talking about, just earlier, he was talking to Todd about all these thoughts he's been having. About, I'm having this dream.
That, but he does.
If she thinks this is a bad thing, then maybe I should think it's a bad thing. But he doesn't dwell on it.
Yeah, and he doesn't understand the ramifications of these pretty serious thoughts that he's been having.
Is he his thoughts though?
You think he's going that deep into it?
I don't know.
Mr. Peanut Butter.
I don't know.
I am not my thoughts.
Is he having these thoughts intrude into him and being like, no,
are you suggesting
the sensible thing to do is for me to address them, talk to them out loud with someone that I trust, and then be like, Yes, no, you're right. They aren't my thoughts. Thank you, Todd. I'm happy now. I'm going and live my life.
Maybe so. Maybe Mr. Peanut Butter is actually a wise, enlightened yogi
Yes.
that knows all the ways of the world.
So Bojack has said, Mr. Peanut Butter is nice to everybody. That's what makes him so stupid. And Todd replies, no, I'm stupid. In that sort of reply, he's referring to his relationship. He's stupid to have had a relationship with Bojack, to have not seen who Bojack really is.
Yeah.
Whether he's been using Bojack as a place to stay, like, so he's been sort of using Bojack in the same way that Bojack's been using Todd, but he's sort of coming to a realization about what this relationship is. He then goes on to say, even I know the only reason you're doing this is because you're in love with Diane. And Bojack proudly says, yes, I am in love with her. I'm finally going to tell her how I feel, which is very much in line with the romantic comedy message where the person interrupts the marriage and declares their love, and then they run off together. But Todd says, she knows how you feel. She made her choice. Look around you. This day is not about you, okay? So maybe you should just stop trying to mess with other people's lives. Yeah, this is where it's Todd's sort of like trying to point out that you might love Diane and Diane might have some feelings for you, but she's made her choice. If her feelings were stronger for you, she wouldn't be getting married there. She would be stopping the wedding. She's had a chance to stop the wedding and she's not, she's continuing onward. So she's clearly made her choice.
And it's not just about Bojack. And like he says, it's not all about you. Like, you know, the whole thing about getting his rock opera destroyed.
Yeah.
He knows that he was behind that because he made it about him. Todd had his own dreams and ambitions to do something, and Bojack made it about him and stopped him.
So Todd then goes into the wedding and we hear Diane's vows that she says to Mr. Peanut Butter. And she says, I never thought I wanted to get married. It's so weird. The idea of dedicating yourself to something for the rest of your life, like, how could you know, right? But then you realise it's okay not to know everything. And some things take a leap of faith. Mr. Peanut Butter, I want to take that leap of faith with you. Even here, I think this shows that she's
having doubt.
Yeah, and I've written she's questioning the social conventions that we have.
Yeah.
So the first line is, I never thought I wanted to get married. And it's so weird. And I think that she's saying here she's not actually 100% sure.
No.
But she's going to go ahead with it anyway and just see what happens. And maybe this is a bit of Mr. Peanut Butter's influence on her. So there's also a visual joke above them. The banner that's above them says, congrats, Diane and Mr. Peanut Butter. Peanut butter is one word. Don't write one word. Which I like that they've taken the joke to another level.
Yeah. I like anything in fiction, whether it's games or films or books or whatever, that hints at a living world. I don't know if I've missed it, but there was no direct reference to someone making a mistake and writing it. But just putting that banner in there gives so much more weight to this living world that they're in, because it's like they're addressing something that potentially happened off screen.
Yes.
Like a really minor thing that happened off screen. Yeah. And I did like that.
So after Diane's vows, we just see Bojack sat alone drinking at one of the tables, which then leads us on to the wedding reception. And I quite like one of the jokes at the wedding reception is that there's a wolf with a T-shirt on that says sheep, and he's sort of chatting up one of the sheep like he's a wolf in sheep's clothing.
Yeah.
And I quite like
I didn't notice that.
To be fair, you might have seen it, but you might not have seen it as well, like the sheep on his T-shirt.
Okay, yeah.
Mr. Peanut Butter approaches Todd and thanks him for the chat they had earlier. He also gives him a business card with Todd's name on it and the title of Executive Vice President of West Coast Operations, which Todd thinks means he controls the waves.
Good joke, that.
Yes.
I enjoyed that. I liked it because it never even crossed my mind.
No, you're right.
So absurd that it's like you would look at that and go, "You're in control of the way." Like,
That's exactly what it says.
It
Yeah.
makes sense when he says it, but I had no idea that it would come up.
Mr. Peanut Butter clarifies that it means Todd is his assistant. And Mr. Peanut Butter says he thinks Todd has a big future ahead of him. So in this short relationship that they've had, Mr. Peanut Butter and Todd, Mr. Peanut Butter is treating Todd completely the opposite way of Bojack. He's given him opportunities, he's treating him, even though it's a meaningless title, he's trying to display that he values him. And I think that's completely the opposite of what Bojack did.
Yeah, I do like this side of Mr. Peanut Butter. He seems to be way more collaborative than Bojack. Bojack's like me against the world, whereas I think Mr. Peanut Butter seems to be more like working with other people.
Yeah, definitely. Diane comes up to Bojack at the bar and she thanks him for coming. She says, "You're a good friend," and she's glad to know him. And then Bojack replies and he apologises that he made things weird, which Diane says they weren't that weird. And Bojack has a little look to the side here, which I think is quite interesting. But just to go back a little bit, I think it's quite interesting here that Diane does thank him for coming. Like, she's been so awkward around the relationship that they've had, and she's come up to him and she's made the effort, and she seems to almost be forgiving Bojack for the awkwardness. And she's showing him that she actually still wants to be friends with him.
I know this is more to this than that.
There's more to it.
I think so, yeah. I don't know. It's just the way that she says, what'd she say? You're a really good friend or something.
Yeah, you're a good friend, and she's glad she knows him.
Yeah, I don't know. I see subtext. And she kisses him on the cheek as well, doesn't she?
Yeah.
I might be wrong, but the last scene that they were together in is when she asked him why he made it weird.
Yes. Yeah.
And they haven't had any other interaction since then. And then she comes up to him at a wedding and goes, "Thank you for being." I don't know.
What if
something? It just didn't add up to me.
Yeah, I'm thinking about maybe she has actually decided. So she's been on the fence.
Okay, yeah.
Now at this wedding, she's like, "No, I'm all in. It's just a peanut butter. I'm fully committed."
And Bojack's just a friend.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So maybe she's come to that.
Yeah. Maybe. Yeah.
What I do really want to talk about is the way that when Diane says they weren't really that weird, Bojack sort of just looks to the side, and I feel like I think he may be thinking that if Diane didn't think they were that weird, then maybe he has overestimated the connection they had. Or is he thinking, why are you pretending that it wasn't a thing? He's questioning maybe exactly what you were saying actually about the subtext. He's saying, like, look, we were so awkward. We had this great relationship. I made it very awkward by trying to kiss you. Why have you suddenly just been okay with this situation?
Yeah.
That doesn't feel right. So maybe Bojack's actually, you're thinking exactly what Bojack was thinking.
Yeah. Where's this come from?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it feels out of character. But I like the idea that maybe it's a point of animation actually that I quite like, that he doesn't really say anything, but we can see him questioning Diane's real intentions as opposed to what she's saying.
Yeah.
But Diane does run off excitedly saying, "I'm married," at which point Bojack turns around to speak to Vincent Adultman. And Bojack asks, "So what have you got so figured out that I don't?" And Vincent replies, "Adult stuff." He then goes on to say, "But that doesn't matter. Not everything's about me," which I think is interesting. It's a bit of maybe a first moment that he's acknowledging that he has been a narcissist. And he says, "Maybe I am a little jealous, not because I actually want to date Princess Caroline anymore, but just because I don't like the idea that I can't. I guess I just assumed that I always could, but I made a lot of bad decisions, not just with her, with everyone, really. You know, Princess Caroline was right. You are a good listener." And Vincent just thanks him. I think this is one of the bits that I like from Bojack. We talk a lot about how he does a lot of bad things. But I think there's bits like this where he just sort of, in him acknowledging that he's done a bad thing, I think shows that there's the potential for him to actually be a nice person. Because a truly bad person wouldn't have a moment of self-reflection and acknowledgement that they've done bad.
Yeah, maybe. But at this point, I don't think he's got a choice. I think he's been backed into a corner. He's at a point now where in one episode, it's confirmed that the woman that he's got serious feelings for, that he's probably not had for anyone for a long time, is married to his professional rival. And the one person that's been consistently around, Todd, is now leaving him for his professional rival, and his agent, his ex-girlfriend, and his frankly bit on the side now seems to have formed a new relationship with 3 boys in a trench coat.
Yes.
So in one episode, the 3 people that are closest to him are moving further away. And he's having a moment of introspection when he realises...
That's like, yeah, when you've done something bad, you see the consequences.
Absolutely.
And then he's realising the consequences of doing bad.
Yes, yeah, I agree with that. But it's taken this much pressure to get to that point.
Yeah, okay, but I would still say he has got to that point.
Yes.
Like, if he was truly the worst person, he wouldn't get to this point of being like, oh, I've realised I've done some bad things.
Yeah. And this is the part where I understood Vincent's character. I think my interpretation of it is that Vincent is a bunch of children in a trench coat. And the reason that he's not saying anything or offering any pearls of wisdom is because he doesn't have any pearls of wisdom, because it's 3 children in a trench coat. However, it is a common, a common approach in therapy or in giving advice to not say anything at all and just listen, because if you let someone talk, most of the time they'll figure it out for themselves. So Vincent inadvertently, without even meaning to, is that sounding board for anyone that wants to listen, because he can't give advice because he's a kid.
And do you think that's why everyone likes him so much?
Yeah, because he doesn't say anything concrete. He doesn't have any
fix people.
Yeah, he doesn't have any specific knowledge or opinions about anything. It's like earlier on when he says, I do business.
Yeah.
Like, it's all very vague because he doesn't know what he's talking about. But people just see that as a good thing because it means that they can project their own thoughts and feelings into the conversation, unfiltered.
Bojack continues and says, sometimes I feel like I was born with a leak, and any goodness I started with just slowly slipped out of me until it's all gone, and I'll never get it back in me. It's too late. Life is a series of closing doors, isn't it? Vincent just pats Bojack with his broomstick hand and says, don't be sad, good horsey. Bojack pauses and says, that actually feels kind of nice, to which the episode ends.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the point what you were saying about being the technique of just listening to someone and allowing them to talk, I think that's definitely what's happening here. And I think it is quite interesting that you can allow someone just to talk. And we think sometimes being a good listener is responding to what the other person has said, another comment that adds to it or takes away from it or something.
Yeah.
It reminds me of, I don't know if it's a myth, but there was a computer programmer that wanted to try and replicate intelligence, like quite a while back. And the way he did it was he wrote a program that when you type something into it, it just responded with the same sentence, but reframed it in a different question.
Okay.
So he said like, oh, my day was terrible today. He said, how was your day terrible? And it just reframed every question.
Okay.
And he tried it on one of the assistants, and he said, I'm just going to give you 5 minutes with this software that I've just developed that just reframes what you said back to you as a question. And he went back in after an hour and he said, why have you not come out and told me what you thought? And the assistant was like, this is the best conversation I've ever had. Like, leave me alone. I need to spend more time with it.
Okay.
So just that idea that you do just need to talk sometimes is exactly that. Bojack also clearly has here, I think, quite a low opinion of himself. When he's talking about, I was born with a leak and any goodness I started with slowly slipped out of me. He thinks he's a horrible person.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether it's like sort of like, oh, I'm a horrible person, so I'm just going to act horrible. But he feels like there's something that he can't control that's making him continue to do these terrible acts. But he does recognise that he seems to be repeating all these bad actions as well. But it also does show his pessimistic view on life when he says about life is a series of closing doors. So I think I might be just explaining the obvious here, but it feels like he's saying that he knows he's a bad person, but as life goes on, there's less and less opportunities for him to not be a bad person.
Okay. I think this is just a representation showing that Bojack is self-aware.
Yeah.
But I think anyone can understand the mistakes they've made after they've made the mistakes. Someone that isn't as self-centered or narcissistic as Bojack would probably, well, they might catch themselves mid-act or beforehand and go, is this really the right thing to do?
Okay.
Well, I think with Bojack, it's like, no, he does something to serve himself. And only now is he having this moment of introspection where he is self-aware enough to go, yeah, I'm a piece of shit sometimes.
Yes. Well, actually, do you know what? I think it might lead us on to what I think is actually good advice from Vincent.
Okay.
Even though it's portrayed as it's just a kid giving a dumb comment on something that he thinks he needs to say because that's what adults say. He says, don't be sad, good horsey. And maybe what he's saying here in the good advice is stop feeling sorry for yourself and just be good to others.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it's supposed to be Vincent actually thinking that, but a lot of what Bojack's saying here is just self-pity, just wallowing in the situation you're in and not actually trying to be a better person.
Do you know how I saw this last interaction? Is that Bojack just wants a bit of love.
Mate, of course, yeah.
And just initially when Vincent says, don't be sad, good horsey, and starts stroking him, initially I was like, well, that's patronising. And I thought Bojack was going to blow up or something. But when he says, that's actually quite nice, it just shows like how lonely and how little attention he gets.
Yes.
So just that little moment of acknowledgement and tangible contact with someone, that was enough for him to actually to go, you know what, actually, I like that. Thank you.
Yeah. And I think I said in the last episode about Bojack not having many sincere compliments from people.
Yeah.
Like he's gone through his whole famous showbiz life, and I think there is definitely a falseness that everyone will give to him, and even people that say they love him will only love him because of the show. I mean, obviously it's portrayed as him just being a kid going, oh, I like horses, I like stroking horses. But yeah, the affection that he gets is a true affection from a child.
Yeah.
And he hasn't experienced
There's no agenda.
Yes, yeah. He hasn't experienced that, so it does feel nice and he's warm to it. But also I think it is a message of what Bojack should be doing. And it's very sound advice from a young mind, from a what did you say? Unagendered. There's no agenda to this mind. It's the true, be nice to people and try to focus on doing good actions in the future. So yes, that was episode 9. And I think my favourite visual joke is the wolf dressed in sheep's clothing. The fact that it was hard to see for you was another thing that makes it good for me, because I think I like the ones that
subtle.
Yeah, you have to watch for a couple of times.
For the animal stuff, I liked the sloth as the lawyer, but on purely just visuals, I really enjoyed the interaction between Mr. Peanut Butter and the mailman.
Yes.
Because
The
I wasn't
animation of-
expecting it. Because, like, when he says he was chasing the mailman because he gave me, like, a dodgy look or something, you instantly think, well, that's just him being a dog, and dogs just don't like mailmen. But then when he drives past and actually gives him this menacing glare, it's like, oh, okay, there's more to this. And it was that menacing glare that I enjoyed that.
I haven't really got any lines that stuck out to me that I really liked.
Again for me, I don't agree with it, but he's nice to everyone, and that's what makes him so stupid.
Okay.
I thought that's a very Bojack line.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, I don't agree with it, but it ties in well with, like I said earlier, it ties in well with that line from the first episode of he doesn't realise how miserable it should be.
As I'm thinking about it more, I'm going to have Vincent's line of "Don't be sad, good horsey,"
Okay.
because I think the more I think about it, I like that it references him being the three children, and it references my thoughts on Vincent and the reason he's there. And I think it has a double meaning of what children say and what is actually good advice.
Okay.
And I think it just finishes off the episode quite nicely. Let's go on to final thoughts. So your rating and final thoughts for this episode, Matthew.
I'll go with a 5 or 6, I think, for this one.
Okay.
Maybe I'll go with a 5, straight down the middle.
Why is that?
Mr. Peanut Butter, I think.
Okay. Yeah.
I do like his character. Like I said before, there's most of the characters in this show are either negative or nihilistic or just plain unlikable. And I think Mr. Peanut Butter is, for all his faults, he is probably the most likable character in the show, just for his positivity. And like I said earlier, maybe the fact that he's a dog also makes him appeal more. But also seeing a bit more depth to his character as well, like when he's confessing to Todd that he has doubts about their relationship and whatever. Yeah, I'll go with a 5.
I feel like in this episode again, there's a lot of humour around him being a dog again.
Yeah.
And I think obviously since you've mentioned you like that, and I think so an episode that features that a little bit more heavily than some of them in the past might appeal to you a bit more by the sounds of it as well.
Going back to what I was saying earlier, if I consume some kind of entertainment, generally I want to be entertained and I want to be uplifted. I want to feel better after watching it. And Bojack, it's so, I mean, it's nihilistic. It like there's a lot of messages in it that are very nihilistic, that are very not negative, but this observational quote unquote comedy that points out a lot of the negative aspects of society or human relations and whatever. Maybe it's a bit too real for me. Going back to my reference point, okay, I like South Park because it's probably the biggest message that I get from South Park is freedom of speech. It's we're going to say what we want about this thing or this person, and we're allowed to do so, and we're allowed to put whatever spin we want on it. And it's also takes current events and makes really good parodies of them, and it's very entertaining because of that. And with Rick and Morty, it's massively centered around stuff that I'm interested in, like nerd culture. When I think of Rick and Morty, my mind instantly goes to the episode where they drop a lightsaber vertically. And it's like so absurd, but it's so brilliant because it's like, yeah, what would happen if you dropped a lightsaber on the ground vertically? I don't know, it really appeals to me. Whereas this type of observational comedy, it like the last episode, the previous episode, I think the reason I scored it so low is because it's not fun.
Okay, so that was one of the questions that I was going to ask you from this. So I will interrupt you and ask it. You've rated this episode higher than the last episodes.
Yeah.
Episode 8, The Telescope.
Yeah.
Without pointing out the obvious, you think this was a better episode than the last episode?
I think it was a more fun episode.
Okay.
And if I watch it, we'll say it how it is, it's a cartoon.
Yes.
And if I watch a cartoon, I want to have fun.
Okay.
Yeah, sometimes I might watch a gritty drama, you know, or some kind of abstract, violent art house film.
Mm.
But I'm watching that and I know what I'm going into, and I don't watch a lot of that stuff as well. Generally, I watch stuff where that will make me feel, like I said, I want to watch stuff that makes me feel better after watching it. And the last episode that I watched, after I finished watching it, I was like, well, that was depressing. And I'm not saying everyone should do that. I'm not saying that's for everyone. That's my personal taste in entertainment.
So my thoughts and rating for this show, I think it's quite a weak episode. I think Vincent Adultman absolutely saves the show for me. I think the little bits of comedy about him, like obviously being a kid or 3 kids, and the broomstick out there as the hand, the fact that his phrases are literally from it, what a kid would say, but no one recognises it, but also how it has a element of truth in it, although it's not made in that way. I really like Vincent, and yeah, so I think if he wasn't in this episode, there wouldn't be a lot in it for me, and it almost feels a bit more of a filler episode, if I'm being honest.
That's interesting that
Yeah.
the wedding of Diane and Mr. Peanut Butter feels like a filler episode for you.
Oh yeah, we did see the wedding, didn't we? But again, that's what I mean. I don't feel like we saw much of the wedding. We saw a bit of we saw Diane's vows, we saw a bit of the reception. Like that was only like a minute max.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like...
Oh, and also Todd finding out about
But nothing...
Bojack, right. No, but it's queued up something.
Yeah,
it's going to be...
But that's what I mean. It's queued up for the next episode.
Yeah.
And the sort of the whole thing of the episode was building this tension that both Diane and Mr. Peanut Butter might not be sure they want to get married, but then they do get married. So I feel like watching this, I feel like something's not right there. So I feel like we're going to learn something later.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, not to shit on American shows, but they're longer than they need to be a lot of the time.
Okay.
So, and I feel that's because they need to fill the schedule so that you do not. I mean, Bojack's not that bad for it, but when you've got like shows that are like 28 episodes like a season, it's like you don't need all those episodes, but you need to fill the time. And I feel like this is a little bit of an episode with that in mind.
Okay.
It's just, they needed 12 episodes for the season.
Okay.
This was the 12th one.
Okay.
The day format with the title screens, I felt was
4th
place. Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, unless it's to do with the film Force Majeure.
Yeah, it must be.
It just felt like it didn't, and it wasn't very structured. Like we had like a massive gap between some days, and then some days were really quick. It just didn't really work. So I'll just ask a quick question. What was the extraordinary event that directly prevents both parties from performing their duty of the contract?
What contract?
So force majeure.
Yeah, but what?
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Part is
So what's the name got to do with it?
Yeah.
If we're queuing up that, unless it's literally to do with the show, unless Bojack was supposed to be preventing this wedding and never actually did, so he was
jury duty.
Yeah,
which is an unavoidable.
Okay,
thing.
yes. So maybe there is no, but I just feel like it's a little bit off. I gave it a 5 out of 10 as well.
Oh wow! Is that the first one we've actually got the consensus on?
But I feel for different reasons.
Yeah.
So for you, it was better.
Mine's gone up and yours has gone down. Yeah.
But this is my lowest, I think, that I've given. IMDb is a 7.8 out of 10.
Wow. Bojack fans are generous.
Yeah, I'm going to stay on this one. And like I said, I do really like Vincent, but I can't have him pulling up an episode to like a 7 or an 8 by himself. What I'd like to do is at the end of this season, I like the idea of having an episode where we try and just round off all the points from season 1, or our thoughts and feelings on season 1. For me, I think it'd be nice just to draw a line in this season and address the whole season as a whole, if that makes sense. So what bits we liked, what bits we didn't like. I would also like, if there's anyone listening to this, which there is some people listening, if you have got a question about the show or our thoughts on the show that you think we haven't addressed, or it's just a comment on the show that you think we should discuss, the email address is the Bojack Podcast @gmail.com. Or if you're listening to this on YouTube, you can just leave a comment. So thank you for listening to this episode. In the next episode, we will be discussing season 1, episode 10, One Trick Pony. Thank you for listening.